Okay, so I'm here in beautiful Toronto, Canada. I wanted to do a little something different, get out of the set for a video, try something new. There's plenty of noise, feels like a city. But yeah, I wanted to do this like a little traveling thing, maybe just do like reviews and stuff in the usual set. I'm working on getting a new set for Oscar videos, but for now I'm going to do a little bit of something like this where I'll go to different places. I'm going to try and keep this brief so I don't look too much like a schizophrenic talking to myself, because I'm sure that a lot of these Canadians think I'm very strange. But I'm going to talk about 4 more Oscar contenders today. I have a big list of them that I want to talk about over a bunch of different volumes leading up to like actual predictions and stuff like that. So let's get started. So first one I want to talk about is Mary Queen of Scots, which is an old kind of Queen Elizabeth I biopic type film. I don't know if it's actually a biopic. I haven't looked that far into it, but I know it's based on a book. And I know Queen Elizabeth I was a real person. And that's sort of sometimes all it takes to get your movie nominated. I think that movies that are that kind of ages, that allow for a lot of really nice production design, a lot of beautiful costume design, and some really stylistic direction are ones that will often come across as ones that the Academy tailors itself to, because as much as they've liked to proclaim that they've changed their ways and all this other nonsense, at the end of the day there are a lot of old white people who are really interested in slow burn dramas about queens. You look at Helen Mirren for The Queen, you look at Meryl Streep for The Iron Lady, you even look back at Shakespeare in Love, which pulled off one of the biggest upsets of all time when it beat Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture. So it's already got that going for it. On top of that, it stars 2 strong leading women of Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie, who themselves alone are on a clear hot streak with the Academy right now, both coming hot off nominations for leading actress last year for Lady Bird and I, Tonya. Margot Robbie is a fresh face with the Academy, but she's still super young and she still has a chance to kind of build her way up. She's almost like Jennifer Lawrence, who took a nomination one year and then before she knew it as a young actress was garnering a win and then more nominations. And then Saoirse Ronan has become an Academy favorite. I think has been nominated 3 different times, and seemingly more and more consistently. So I think that for a strong leading women film, especially in a time like this, coming hot off the Me Too movement, and it's still sort of continuing, they're going to want to be looking to award strong female performances in female films that are driven like that. But I think this movie is sort of set up in every sense to be a strong Oscar contender, despite being an unknown director, and that can sometimes be a good thing. You look at someone like Barry Jenkins with Moonlight. I think that the movie is pretty much setting itself up for success, just in and of itself, the way it's already coming across, and some of these stills look like it has a high production value, and that's the kind of stuff that the Academy loves. So I think Mary Queen of Scots, which I've been hearing about for a very long time, and its arrival to cinemas is already very hyped up. I think it's definitely one to take a look at. My phone just went in a low power mode. I really hope that didn't screw anything up. The second movie I want to talk about is Boy Erased. I saw a lot of comments asking me to talk about this one, and I think that that's for good reason, because there's a lot to talk about with Boy Erased. It's the new Joel Edgerton directed film, which is a good thing, I think. He's proven himself to be a good director. He didn't really tailor The Gift to the Academy. I don't think he was really looking for Oscar attention with The Gift. But with that movie, I think he showed enough that he's a good director, and that critics are fans of what he's going to do with his work. Hello, Mom. But I think that this movie is definitely, he's working to tailor more to the Academy. The subject matter, the fact that it's an adaptation of a novel, it seems depressing as all get out, and you know that the Academy loves that shit. And on top of that, the cast is unbelievably strong. Lucas Hedges is starring in this movie, and the Academy has shown that they'll recognize him even when many others don't, for Manchester by the Sea. I made the ballsy prediction a couple years ago that he was going to win for Manchester. That didn't go well at all. But it's got a very strong cast, and it looks like it's lined up for success, except for one very big thing. If you're a follower of this channel, you'll know why I think that this movie has a very low chance of being nominated at all, and that is because it's coming out in September. I am an avid believer in 2 things, and 2 different months of the year in which you don't want your movie to be released. The first is January, because that's where they just plop all the pieces of shit. That's where they just put all the bad movies. And September, because that's where award season movies go to die. I stand by that if Stronger had released in October or November, Tatiana Maslany and Jake Gyllenhaal both would have gotten nominations for that film. I stand by that if Black Mass had come out in October and not September, that Johnny Depp would have had a better chance of a nomination. But the movie came out in September, and lo and behold, as October and November and December came, better Oscar movies came out with better chances and better things behind them, and it got screwed because it got... It got screwed because it got left in the dust and people forgot about it, and it gets blown away when movies like 3 Billboards come out, when movies like Shape of Water come out, because they're so much fresher in people's minds and Academy voters' minds, and you're not necessarily thinking about movies that came out back in September because they've been so lost and forgotten. So I think that could kill it, and it's been killing movies, I think, for at least as long as I can remember following award season, that these movies that come out in September, they just get annihilated, and I don't see that getting changed. I mean, the one silver lining is it's like late September, but even so, I don't know. I think that's a huge killer, and I think it really needs to be cautious, and people need to be very intrepid when deciding whether to put that movie on their predictions list or not. Beautiful Boy is what I'm going to talk about next video, by the way. I'm not talking about this one. I haven't looked too far into that one yet. The third movie I want to talk about is Black Klansman, which is the new Spike Lee film that is going to be releasing in August. This movie was shown at one of the big film festivals. I think it might have been Sundance. Prove me wrong. I'll look it up after and I'll correct myself. But it received a lot of critical acclaim. People really like this movie. They really like how unique it is, the style of it. And I think that's really represented in the trailer. I think it's a really neat-looking film in terms of the fact that it's playing a lot of these racial issues off as comedy, which is something Get Out kind of did, but with horror and comedy. So I think that it kind of has that going for it, and Spike Lee really knows that Spike Lee, at the very least, is a very styled filmmaker. He really knows how to put his own little spin on films. You watch all of his movies, and there's always a way to tell that you're watching a Spike Lee film, and it looks like he's going to really be kind of presenting that with Black Klansman. On top of that, I think you got to talk about the subject matter. I think the subject matter in the age that we're living in, it's a big thing to talk about, especially when it's a biopic, it's a true story, and he's playing it off in a manner that might seem satirical. I think that's a big thing that plays in the movie's favor. I just got bit, and there's a fucking hornet. There's so many bugs, it's a joke. But I think that's definitely something to look towards, the fact that the subject matter is so relevant. The cast is pretty strong. None of them have really been recognized by the Academy yet, but they've pretty much been recognized as good actors. Denzel Washington's son is the lead in this film, which I think is a big driving force to it. I think the Academy will look towards it a little more. Adam Driver is obviously becoming bigger and bigger, and then Topher Grace, you know, whatever. But two things that worry me about the film. One is the August release date, which I think is inevitably what killed Detroit, which came out in August. And I think when first pitched, you know, people would look at that as a huge contender. Catherine Bigelow biopic about the racial riots of the 60s is something that just seems like you'd be hearing about it for the first time when you're watching the Oscars. But it came out in the summertime, and it got lost in translation, and people forgot about it. It's very hard when you come out that early to keep steam. One of the only movies last year that was really successful at it was Dunkirk, and it was just because it stayed in theaters so long and it made so much money and people paid so much attention to it, and it ended up just continuing to receive that kind of information, or that kind of attention. The other thing that worries me is actually Spike Lee himself. Spike Lee, when you look back at his film record, despite this documentary that came out in the 90s, has not received feature film recognition by the Academy since 1992 for Malcolm X, and he wasn't even himself nominated. It was like 2 nominations for Denzel and maybe costume design. Other than that, none of his movies since have been nominated for even 1 Oscar. So it's not like they've been gushing over his work for decades. You know, they liked his earlier work, like Do the Right Thing got, I think, a screenplay nomination, but, you know, it's not like he's been consistently nominated for every film that he does. This is just one of the few that he's made in the past couple of years that might fly under the radar yet again. That being said, a lot of the movies he's made recently, like things like Chirac back in 2015, didn't really get a whole lot of widespread attention, and this movie already seems to have a lot of people riding its coattails and driving behind it and really looking to see this movie succeed because they've found it to be great quality. And if it is great quality, it even has that better shot. But I think that the fact that the Academy isn't like in love with Spike Lee is kind of a big thing. They may not necessarily love his style or satirical style, but I think if Get Out showed us anything, it's that taking a certain spin on racial issues is a big thing that the Academy might be looking for, and this could be the kind of time that they want to see it again. The very last movie I want to talk about for this video is Bohemian Rhapsody, which is the Queen biopic, or the Freddie Mercury biopic that is releasing in November. So right in the heart of release date, or right in the heart of award season. That's always a big thing. I think November, October, and December are prime months, or like a limited release in January, but that means you got, or a wide release in January, but that means you got a limited release in December, so that counts anyway. It's the very first Queen feature film biopic, which I think is a big deal. I think that favors First Man too. You want to have the first time biopic because that allows you to style it in a way that other people wouldn't. They're right there. They've been playing like catch for about 20 minutes. But it allows you to style it in a certain way that nobody else can do. You don't necessarily want to be repeating biopics. Like that's something that might have, you could make the argument that that killed Steve Jobs back a couple years ago. It got a couple nominations, but maybe it would have had a better shot if it was the very first Steve Jobs biopic, and it wasn't. That Ashton Kutcher bullshit had come out a couple years before. But it's the very first Queen biopic, and on top of that, it looks great. That trailer that was put together is either just brilliantly edited for a bad movie, or it's reminiscent of what's going to be a really good movie. But that is a fantastic trailer. The movie looks great, and Rami Malek, I think, is a big factor to look for when you're looking at this movie, who is a great actor. I'm in the middle of Mr. Robot, and if you follow me on Twitter at Ice Cold Film, you know I'm loving it. I love Mr. Robot, and he's proven himself to me to be a phenomenal actor, even in something like Until Dawn, which is a video game he's excellent in. And he's looking to be like a huge leading man in this film. He's looking to be the central force behind everything, driving the whole movie. I almost just got hit with a tennis ball. That was really scary. I flinched. You can see that camera. But he's looking to be the driving force behind the film. So I think if nothing else, like, you want to look for Rami Malek as a leading actor nominee, because he really seems to be devoting everything to this. He's got a dialect. He's sort of changing his physical appearance, and as last year shows with Gary Oldman, like, the Academy loves that kind of shit. So I think Rami Malek is definitely one to look towards. And obviously the biggest hitting factor, if I had to look at pros and cons of this film, is the production hell that it went through, because it went through plenty. If you've been following it at all, it was directed by Bryan Singer, but there were a lot of on-set problems with him and Rami Malek, and then Bryan Singer was fired, and Dexter Fletcherer, I think is his name, the director of Zombieland, and the new Venom movie, was brought on to finish it. But I think if I read it correctly, they're still giving the credit to Bryan Singer, so that, like, it could very well be a disaster of a film that's being marketed well. There's no way to tell as of right now, but I definitely still think it's one to look forward to. It's gathering a lot of buzz. A lot of people are talking about this movie. A lot of people asked me to talk about this movie, and I'm actually really excited to see it. I think it looks fucking awesome. And it comes out on my birthday, or a day before my birthday, which is, I'm very excited for that movie, and I think it's definitely one to look for. Anyway, that's it. Before I get eaten by these bugs that are all right here and hit in the face with a tennis ball by these kids who are playing something, I don't really know what, look for Volume 3 of this to come very, very soon. I have a huge list of movies I want to talk about before, like, the end of summer rolls around, and obviously I have about 2 months to do that, so I'm going to try and fit all these movies in. Leave in the comments below what movies you'd still like to see me talk about, because I'm still looking for recommendations, whether I think they have a good shot or a bad shot. I'm going to talk about them. I do read your comments, believe it or not. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like or subscribe. There is more Oscar coverage coming very soon, and for those of you who are interested in other things like movie reviews or things that I might not talk about primarily on this channel unless I have a ton to say about it, you can follow me on Twitter at IceColdFilm, or on Letterboxd, which is IceColdFilms, or on Instagram, which is newly found at ice_cold_films. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. My foot fell asleep. Oh, it's so bad. Ah, fuck me. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's all bad. Oh, it's all bad.